Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to America First Patriot Podcast. Defending freedom and liberty is our motto. We put God first and politics second. I'm your Patriot host, Chauncey I. Welcome to our podcast. I am honored and blessed to have in the studio today Congressional candidate Jeff Zink, who is a friend of mine, who is a pastor, who believes in family values and wants to continue to fight for our freedoms and liberty in this country today. Jeff has been on the front line during several elections, fighting for our freedom, fighting for fair elections. He was at the Capitol on January 6th of 2021, fighting to redress our grievances to Congress about the elections. I know that Jeff has a lot to talk about tonight, so without any further ado, let me bring my dear friend, Congressional candidate, Arizona District 3, Jeff Zink. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chauncey, for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to everybody and answering questions that people may have in regards to what has happened since 2022 or 2020. And we just need to roll right into it.
Jeff, tell us a little bit about who you are and how we got to where we are today.
Well, I'm basically a country boy from West Texas. Grew up in the Texas Panhandle, in the oil field and ranch area. Went to school, ended up in sports medicine for 38 years. Part of that, I also was an NCAA basketball official, a scuba diving instructor, an athletic trainer, exercise physiologist, college professor. I mean, all of those things kind of rounded me up to the point to where I'm at now, where our country is in dire need of strong people that can actually do something and have a backbone that can stand up against a tyrannical government.
Absolutely. We need more people like you standing up in this time where our government is collapsing in front of our faces. What are some of the ideas that you have, Jeff, going to Congress that you'd like to address?
Well, one of the things is that here in Congressional District 3, we have a unique situation here where you can't blame the Republican Party for anything that has transpired when Congressional District 9 was created. Now it's been realigned, and it's Congressional District 3 that I'm running for. But this position has been literally run by the Democratic Party. There's never been a Republican sit in a seat here in this congressional district in Maricopa County. And so it's a unique situation where Raul Grijalva, then it was transferred over to Ed Pastor, and then Ruben Gallego, all three Latino male, all three Democrats. And for 24 years, we've literally been under the stronghold of the Democratic Party, and we have watched the population literally deteriorate in the fact that in 2000 we had 12% below the poverty line, and now it has increased up for 24 years. It's increased up to almost 70% below the poverty line. So we have to start addressing things, and the Democrats are really, especially with Ruben, he decided that he would get Congressional District 3 $25 million. You would think that that would be to help the homeless, help the veterans, to help needy that's in our district. No, that was for a bridge so that people of color could watch birds. This is how far off the Democratic Party here in this district is, that they went out and they thought that instead of lowering gas prices, food prices, getting good jobs to come in this area, they went out and they decided that they were going to spend this money on a bridge to watch birds. And so this is why it's critical that we need to elect somebody that literally is going to work for the people.
Yeah, that's really sad. Real quick question, Jeff. How are you connected? Because I'm getting static from your end.
Let's see here. Let me make sure. Let me try that. Is that a little better?
Yeah, but when you speak, I'm getting static in the background. Are you calling directly from your phone?
I am. And
okay.
I don't have earpieces or anything, so I'm talking directly into my phone. So.
Okay. Well, maybe Big Brother is watching us.
Well, I can assure you.
I wouldn't be
that
surprised.
Here's the problem that I have. This phone that I'm on is monitored by the FBI, and so let's go into why that would be. And Chauncey, you know this. My son and I went to January 6th. I was there that day. I actually got to see firsthand what had happened. And it's completely contradictory to what in 2021 all of this had happened on January the 6th. And the thing is that my son and I, who was together 100% of the time, I've never said that we were not apart. And the thing is that my son is a convicted felon. He went to trial. He was convicted of the 1512C2. He was convicted of being on Capitol grounds, and he was also a part of remaining on Capitol grounds. And none of this was true because here's the thing. I was with him 100% of the time. Have I been charged? Did I have on February the 4th, the FBI with 15 agents kick in the door of my house or anything? No, but that's what happened to my son. The thing is that what we did do was we took video of a kid named Hunter Allen Empty, and he literally broke and was the point of the spear the windows in the Capitol. he was the first person to breach the Capitol. And my son and I actually recorded that. Now, you would think that when the Capitol Police and the FBI, when they were talking with me, that they would have arrested him. Well, they didn't. Now, he was arrested on January the 6th, but we later found out that he was released and allowed to go back to California. It wasn't until August of 2021 that he was arrested and officially charged. And he received, in a trial, 4 months incarceration, 3 years probation, $2,921. That was it.
We have people that are still waiting trial. These stories keep getting worse and worse. I apologize, Jeff. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've been holding spaces on Twitter X about J6ers, and between the medical malpractice, them beating up inmates, knocking their teeth out. It's just, and then them putting them, because of the 1512 charge, terrorists, they're putting them in situations with really career and violent criminals. And people don't realize this. I hope that the Supreme Court will decide and get rid of the 1512, because no American that went there that day should be charged with the 1512. And now, except maybe that gentleman that breached the Capitol, that broke windows, he acted in a terroristic manner. But you can see the difference in politics, that they only went after America First people, patriots, veterans, Americans, people that are on the other side of the social dynamic, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, whatever it be. They can get away with everything. When they burned down the Capitol, nobody's got arrested. I cannot believe.
Well, now hold on, though. The Summer of Love was mostly peaceful, though, Chauncey. That's what they want us to believe.
Yeah. It's we're in the process of, this is historic, and I hope and pray with people like yourself the dynamic will change. I can't imagine.
Well, one of the things that I want to continue with that story is this. Now, the thing is that what came out in my son's trial. So let's move forward. Now we've got the conviction. We've got everything that happened with Hunter, and he was allowed to put off him going into incarceration until after he had finished college. So they suspended, this was in August, they suspended it to the end of May, so he didn't go in until June of the following year. So the 21st, and then on the 22nd in May, they allowed him to go in, and basically 4 months. So now, let's fast forward. Now, again, on February the 4th, 15 federal agents kick in my son's door, tear the front end of his house out, enter into every entryway, flashbang him and his dog, and handcuff him and drag him out into the winter, because it's winter in Lubbock, Texas. And so we go, and it's not until September of last year that his trial actually came to the federal court system. And that's when we learned that Mike Brown, federal special agent, lying piece of, you can add the other aspect of it, that said my son entered into the Capitol, fought with Capitol Police, and was directly responsible for killing Brian Sicknick. Now, this all came out in Ryan's trial just a week prior to him actually going into trial. And they dropped entering into the Capitol. Well, then we said, well, then you must dismiss. And they said, no, there's other things. And then we found out that they dropped killing Brian Sicknick because Brian actually died of a brain aneurysm the next day that was also unrelated to J6 and had nothing to do with it, yet they had put out reports that somebody had hit him over the head with a fire extinguisher, and they named my son as that person. So this is the seriousness. So we now have a federal agent that has perjured himself, but we enter into a trial. In that trial, Judge Geb Boasberg, one of the most corrupt judges, federal judges, that we will be seeking, in a court of law going against him because he made the statement that Ryan was guilty of a crime. We just have to have the trial after we had made all these motions. And so we went through and literally proved that my son did not enter, did not fight with Capitol Police, and obviously they dropped the charges with Brian. So none of that was there. So what was he convicted of? Of being a white, straight, Christian male that was a Trump supporter. Because of that last one was the nail in the coffin that caused him then to be convicted. And the thing is that the 1512C2 was picked up by the Supreme Court, and that's the reason why my son's not in prison right now, because it was in between the conviction and his sentencing. And so Judge Boasberg cannot render a sentencing until then, but we've all been told that if it goes against the J6ers and they uphold the 1512C2, then a added charge of domestic terrorist enhancement will be added to my son's conviction as well, and that will increase it to 32 years. And that's what he's facing without doing any of these things. Yet we videotaped somebody who got 4 months, 3 years probation, $2,921 restitution. So I always say you're innocent until proven guilty, but today you're guilty until proven Democrat.
For those that are tuning in, you're listening to America First Patriot podcast, and we're proud and honored to have in the studio J6 protester and Arizona congressional candidate and pastor Jeff Zink in the studio talking about his experience on January 6th. Every time I hear anyone speak about it, I become speechless that this is the country that I grew up in the 1960s and 70s and realized it would be a socialist, communist, quasi-government that we're facing. It just leaves me speechless, and as we move forward, I'm hopeful that Donald Trump gets elected, but, all the shenanigans, all the shenanigans that they've been playing from day one, and even now with all these frivolous trials and charges, I don't know if you've heard the latest, but the Democrats want Trump to have the debate with Biden so they can X out Biden, and then at the Democratic National Convention nominate Michelle Obama.
Right.
It's really sad what we are facing. And the thing is that people aren't even, half the country is not even as oblivious to what's going on. Or maybe more than half is oblivious. It's, I don't know, Jeff. I'm hopeful. I pray. But based on history, I'm very pessimistic about this election. And even if Donald Trump gets in, that's only going to be a hiccup. I mean, granted, God bless, it'll be great for the J6ers, but the damage with all these illegal immigrants and all the stuff that's going on, I don't know if God doesn't intervene, I don't see a big stop to halt it. I just see Donald Trump creating a hiccup in the 4 years that he's there. But, things can change,
Oh, absolutely.
But go ahead. Do you want to say something, Jeff?
Well, one of the things that we have to do, and one of the questions I'm asked is your listeners, what can we do? That's the number one question. It seems so insurmountable. The thing is that we need to look at why the J6ers were there. We had a election that we thought was fraudulent. Now, the other aspect that I can help people understand is this. See, I worked both Arizona audits in 2020 and 2022. I worked the Texas audit. I helped with Garland Farberito in Georgia. Was going to work with Doug Mastroni in Pennsylvania till he was removed from his chair and stripped of all of his committees. And so a audit wasn't able to be done in Pennsylvania. I've worked Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota. We helped with Tina Peters in Colorado and what had happened with her as the county recorder who literally caught Dominion. And see, here's the other thing. A lot of people are scared to talk about Dominion and everything, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more here in just a few minutes. But here's something that's really interesting. I'll go all the way out and say that Dominion has software that shows and flips ballots. It takes screenshots and then turns them to zeros and ones, and then it can realign and print out a whole new ballot, and the other ballot, the original ballot, is destroyed. All of these things we've proven in a court of law. But here's the thing. Oh, you've lost all these lawsuits. No, they said that we didn't have standing. When we hit the higher courts, at Supreme Court at state levels and at Supreme Court in the federal land, they said that we, the people, do have standing. So now they're all starting to come back down to the lower courts, and we're now starting to win these court cases. And so when somebody looks at this, and you have to question things like, let's go with Wisconsin. Wisconsin has Megan Wolf, who is over the election integrity, is being protected by the Speaker of the House, who you would think would be a Democrat, but he is a Republican. And he refuses to put on the bill to have her impeached. See, she's been impeached on the Senate side, but he refuses to do that. And why? Because Wisconsin, we've already proven this in a court of law, has 3 million voters that are not eligible to vote, meaning that they've either died, they're ghost votes, they've moved from the state, they've moved from their address and live somewhere else in Wisconsin, but are not registered at their address, which means that they're not able to vote. All of these are viable that we need to clean up the voter rolls. So we need to do this in every state, and we've been fighting that, and people are constantly, the rhinos, the Democrats, and the Uniparty have literally been blocking us and trying to prevent us from doing that. So one of the things that transpired in Texas, when we won 3 cases very, very quickly. The reason why is that these 3 have a normally high turnout even when they don't turn out, meaning that on a low, when you go back 20 years and you look at the average of how many people voted in these 3 counties, a bad year was somewhere around 48%. Now think about this. In 2022, how many people came out and riled up? Well, they had over 64% of the constituents in those three counties show up. What ended up happening is that everybody started looking around going, how did these people get elected? And then when we were asked to come in and do the audit, we found one glaring thing that happened in those three counties that got it removed instantly, which is we had 105, 120, and 123% turnout. Now, you can't have more than 100% turnout in any election. You can only go to 100%, and then that's it. They had to cheat, and by doing that, they had to inject votes that weren't there, and they went over the 100%. So when we took it to the judge looked at it, immediately tossed it. They had another election, and every person that had so-called been elected was kicked out, and every person that should have been in office was placed in office because they did a single day paper ballot, hand counted at the precinct level, and the people won. And so it's possible of doing this, but this is what we're going to have to do. And the thing is that I have done this all over the United States and have seen what Dominion has done. And it's really interesting how this all plays out. And so for people to understand what's going on, we have to get this information out. But we have the mainstream media that will block this information, and only thing that they talk about are the cases that were lost. Well, let's look at one case that was tossed out. So I'm going to have you go back and think in your memory, Chauncey. Do you remember when Fox News settled with Dominion $786 million defamation case?
Yes.
You remember? Okay. Now, that happened on a Friday. Now, what most people don't know, which you're going to have to go back and look at, go to page 8 or 12 of the newspaper on that Friday, and you're going to find a very small blurb. Dominion drops case with Mike Lindell. That whole thing was a facade, and what they were trying to pull the wool over the American people is BlackRock owns Fox News, and it also owns Dominion. What they did was they allocated money and moved it from one account to the other in one business. And people need to, go do their own research. But what happened is on that very day, Dominion dropped the case with Mike Lindell, who was very vocal in criticizing Dominion. And you know the reason why they dropped the case that day?
Why they dropped it that day?
Because discovery was going to be granted to Mike Lindell, and they were going to get access to the source code of Dominion, which showed how they stole the election. And so they did not want that happening. And so all of this facade of Fox News, and they threw it out there and stuff so that they could cover up what was really important and what the people didn't see what was going on. So I implore your listeners to go and do their own research to go see this, because why would a congressional candidate be so vocal is because I've worked with Mike Lindell and their team and what was going on, and we knew what was happening. And that's one of the reasons why we allowed everybody to go through. But then there's people like me that are now telling people, and they're like going, wait, that doesn't make any sense. They go and look it up, and sure enough, they start finding these things out for themselves.
That is unbelievable. That is extremely powerful. So Dominion settled so they would not be totally exposed. Let me ask you a question. As a result of that lawsuit, do you think, well, I guess not that I think, they probably will try it again. That's why they settled.
Well, the whole idea was that they settled for the reason that most people don't actually catch. They made a big deal to settle so that they could say, well, Fox News was wrong in what they said and the defamation lawsuit, so they had to pay because they lost. They didn't. It didn't go to court. They settled out of court, but most settlements, you don't hear how much they settled for. This one, they settled $786 million. Oh, how bad. I can't believe how bad they are. And then when you know what's happening and what they're trying to cover up, then you start going, maybe there's something else, because we were going to gain access to the source which showed how Dominion flips an election. So let's go one step further. Let's look at, do you remember Venezuela?
The name sounds familiar.
Okay. So Venezuela was the third largest GDP in the world. If you can think back long enough ago, the country of Venezuela was a very prosperous, very rich, oil-rich, and just a rich country. And so what happened? Well, Hugo Chavez started running for president, and he brought in a little-known company called Dominion. This was when Dominion was just first starting. And Hugo Chavez won the election out of nowhere, overcame the gentleman that was running against him, and so things were really going well. The next election, he won by a landslide, but yet the people were grumbling and griping because they said, well, I didn't vote for him. Did you vote for him? I didn't vote for him. And they started talking amongst themselves, but yet they had this election. Now, there was a guy named Hyder Garcia that was a part of that. So now, he does such a good job, Hugo Chavez becomes a dictator. And communism and socialism moves in, and Venezuela goes down, and it's really just a bad country to live in. Inflation was 14,000%, and the people are starving, and all of the things that are taking place because of that. Well, Hyder took his Dominion machine and left and went to a small island called the Philippines. And at the Philippines, if you remember about 12, 15 years ago, where the people revolted and dragged the elected officials out into the streets, some of them they actually executed. Then, and he barely got off of the island. Well, where did Hyder Garcia go? He went to a very robust Republican state called New Mexico. And in one election using Dominion machines, it went from a red to a blue, and now the Democrats have that, and that's one of the states that is now failing just as much as New York and California. It's also failing. So he does such a good job. He moves on to a small county in Texas called Tarrant County. And I get a phone call from a lady, and she said, hey, I have this nice guy who is really wanting to work with us, and he's going to help us with the audit here because we don't understand how in one election we went from red to blue and nobody in our area voted for a Democrat. And so we looked at the FOIA requests, and they weren't even in the ballpark. So we corrected all of their FOIAs, and I told them, I said, this person that you're talking to, it'll be the last civil conversation you have. And sure enough, she calls me back, and she said, that man was the meanest man in the world. I can't believe that he said the things that he said and that he's not going to work with us. So we ended up going into court. Well, we proved that Tarrant County had, they said that Texas didn't have Dominion. What they had was ES&S. And what people need to understand is you need to listen for these names. Dominion is the parent company. ES&S is a subsidiary. ProV&V is another subsidiary. And Smartmatic is another. All of them have the same software, and it has the same capabilities that anytime you put your ballot in for it to be counted, it will be scanned, and then it can be, once it's scanned, it can be altered. And then once it goes to another place that's undisclosed behind doors that you can't see, they will shred the originals so that they only print out what it has been scanned, and that has the ability of changing your vote. So we've proven this, and we have shown this, but because Dominion is a third party, this is why we have to go to our elected officials and say, stop using these machines. And I'm here talking about this, and yet you're one of many podcasts that I've talked about this open, and I've yet to be sued. I've yet to have Dominion come knocking on my door because they know that I've worked with Mike Lindell. I know what the source code is, and if they want to get backed into a corner, we'll go with discovery and we'll blow this whole thing open. And they won't do that. So I'm able to sit and talk to people so that it sounds crazy, but yet we have proven over and over what's taking place.
I'm speechless again. For those that are tuning in, you're listening to America First Patriot Podcast. We have in the studio J6 protester and congressional candidate Jeff Zink, and we're talking about the Dominion voting machines and the sub-corporations that they use and other names. So Jeff, based on what you just said to me, is there any hope for maybe honest elections? Now, the other thing that I'm thinking about is who is donating to these Congress people, under what name, that allows Dominion to continue to operate?
Well, one of the things is that let's go back to Wisconsin. So I talked about the Speaker of the House, Robin Voss, Megan Wolf, and why he's doing that. Well, let's look at a little bit deeper into what he has as far as in play. He has made a couple of trips all the way to Beijing, China. He is on a board that actually China pays money into this board, in which he takes money from the CCP. He has been instrumental in having farmers in Wisconsin and Iowa that lose their farms, and the Chinese are picking them up and are buying our food. Now, Biden just is about to try to sign a bill that will allow the Chinese to take over all of the pig farms, in which they will control our pork industry. Do you think that they will be advantageous to the American people? No, they're not. And so here is a way that we have a corrupt Republican that is getting money from the CCP, allowing farms to be sold to the Chinese and control. We also have Bill Gates, who is the number one farmer. Can you believe this? He owns more farmland than any person in America, and yet he is not farming anything whatsoever. Has no cattle, has no pigs, have no chickens, have not farming for any vegetables or anything else. And so we as individuals need to start waking up and understanding that a famine is coming, and it's being perpetrated by these globalists that are out there that are actually trying to kill the people. If you don't believe me, go to TED Talks and listen to Bill Gates, and he actually tells you what they were going to do with the vaccines and starving people and a whole bit of trying to reduce population so that we reduce our carbon footprint. And we as Americans, we need to understand this. One belch from a volcano puts out more CO2 than all of the cars that are on the open road in the United States that run for an entire year. In one belch, a volcano puts more CO2 in the atmosphere than what all of those collectively combined do for an entire year. To think that we can actually change and alter climate change, all that was done was to create taxes for people so that they can tax the American people more and more. This is the true reality of what's taking place. So as a congressional candidate, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to speak to everybody and let them know what the reality is, what really is happening, and that the J6, while there were violence, and I condemn that violence, but we were there to peacefully protest because we thought that the election had been stolen. Since then, I've worked in the audits across the United States. We have proved that. And if you don't believe me, go to Georgia, because Kemp actually said that the 2020 election had fraudulent ballots. There was an injection of well over 300,000 ballots injected into that election, which would change and alter all of those. In Arizona, we had 270 that was injected in here, which changes all of the elections here in Arizona. And we also proved it that there were over 40,000 in Tarrant County, which changed all of their elections. And Minnesota, you can go to each one of these states and look at how we've proven all of this. So one of the things that what I tell people is that God says that we walk in this world boldly, that we are to not be afraid. So how do we do this? You as the listener need to contact your state representatives, your state senator, your state House of Representatives, and you need to tell them that they need to kick Dominion, ES&S, ProVNB, Smartmatic, get them out of your state. You need to do a one weekend ballot. So what we do is we go on a Saturday, a Sunday, a Monday, and then obviously the day of voting would be on a Tuesday. We do 4 days. At the end of that, it's all paper ballots. It will be hand counted at the precinct level. Now, to give you an idea, we actually have a guy that is going around the country showing how to do hand counts and how easy it is. To give you an example, Maricopa County did their state convention. We had a little over 5,000 ballots that were cast, and we had 5 different candidates, and in less than an hour we had the results, all hand counted, all on camera, so everybody could see what was happening, what was transpiring, the whole bit. Nothing was done in secret, all so that everybody could watch it, and we had that many ballots counted in less than an hour. And so it can be done. And so that was 5,000, but the precinct level would be 1,000.
Right.
So with that, we would literally be able to count an entire state in a couple of hours and have the results within 6 hours.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Jeff, we have about 5 or 7 minutes left. You've given us a ton. You've given us a ton of information on the elections. I'm still speechless on what you just expressed about Dominion, their sub companies. When is your election, Jeff?
My primary will be on July the 30th. Anybody who wants to have a congressman that will talk to you just the way I just talked with your listeners, that will give you the truth. I don't sugarcoat anybody. I treat people as adults, not as children. I give them the information and have them go look it up. You can go to jeffzink.vote. Take a look at my website. It does have a donation button there. $5 to $10 goes a long way in my campaign. I am being primaried this year. The Democrats are so terrified of me that they actually had one of their own change. He was a Democrat, registered Democrat, and you can take a look at that for yourself. And he changed parties, and now he's trying to primary me, thinking that a Democrat can run against another Democrat, and then that way the Democrats can keep this district. So this is the kind of shenanigans that they're willing to do. So I'm more than happy to, answer questions, talk to people, show them where they need to go, and try to help them. But jeffzink.vote and donations to my campaign will definitely help me get over the line to go against these Democrats and to get into, because here's the bottom line. Donald J. Trump can't do it by himself. He's going to have foot soldiers, and he's going to need people like myself in Congress working and getting and having his back. And that's what I'm here for.
Jeff, thank you so much for your courage, your patriotism, your faith. You are a beacon of hope in the midst of turmoil. I hope that you will come back on again, and maybe the next time we do a podcast, we'll set up a Q&A. We'll have callers call in and ask you questions.
Absolutely. Be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, because a lot of the information that you share, a lot of people still don't know, and even New York Times article on page 12 that awards Mike Lindell money. I didn't even hear about that, you know. But thank you for your information, your insightfulness, you know, and your courage, most importantly, to stand up against the elephant in the room. We need more people like you fighting for us. I will keep you in my prayers, Jeff, and we will be in touch, and hopefully I'll have you back on again if your time permits, so we can further have a discussion about 2024 elections and what's ahead.
Oh, absolutely. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Chauncey, for having me on.
It's my pleasure and my honor, Jeff. You know, God bless you and your family. You're a testament to what we should be looking for in candidates in this country today. You know, instead of politicians that have sold their souls for power and money or positions, you know, while the American people are still suffering. Keep everybody in our prayers. Thanks, Jeff, again. You know, you have a great evening, and we'll have you back on soon.
Thank you, Chauncey. I look forward to it.
This is American First. You've been listening to American First Patriot Podcast. Defending freedom and liberty is our motto. We put God first and politics second. We're proud and honored to have in the studio this evening Jeff Zink, who was a J6 protester standing up against the 2020 election. And also, he's a congressional candidate out of Arizona in the 3rd District. If you can support him, please, $1, $5. He is a man of the people. JeffZinkvote.com, or on the description of this podcast, it is highlighted his name. You can click on the link there and follow him. Or if you have any questions or make a donations, we really appreciate it. Please consider following us, America First Patriot Podcast, on Twitter, USA First Podcast. I'm your host, Chauncey Brown, USA First Patriot. You can follow me on Twitter as well. We thank you all for tuning in, and please join us next. We're off Wednesday right now. Next Monday, we're going to have in the studio Darlene Swaffer, who is a candidate for Congress in Florida. They call her the Medicaid lady. She's running again in Florida. This is her second time running for Congress, and we're going to be having her in the studio. We're going to be proud and honored to hear what she has to say about Florida. Thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, God bless you all, and have a good night.